Hello, and welcome to the New York Stock Exchange's Digital Leaders Series. I'm John Tuttle, NYSE's Vice Chairman and Chief Commercial Officer. In this ongoing series, we will feature interactive discussions with technology leaders who are helping navigate and support the rapid push to digitalization across all industries. Over the past year, small and medium-sized businesses are among those hardest hit by the pandemic. The success of these companies has proved essential as they are responsible for the creation of new jobs and represent the main engine for economic growth, innovation, and competitiveness in the United States. One such innovation we've observed since the onset of the pandemic is that in a contactless, socially distanced world, technology has been the key to helping these businesses operate and thrive. We're excited to hear how technology leaders from GoDaddy, Bill.com, and Square are continuing to help support these small businesses through the pandemic and how the process of innovating is leading them into the future. With that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Bonnie Hyun, NYSE's Head of Technology Capital Markets.
Great. Thank you, John. And I want to welcome all of you to this exciting, engaging, and hopefully interactive conversation for the next hour. As head of tech for the New York Stock Exchange, I talk to various leaders that are really leading these amazing companies around next generation tech and innovating and pushing ahead in what has been a very challenging 12 months. But what we don't hear enough of sometimes is really around the small and medium-sized businesses that are working every day to put food on the table, that has had to pivot their operating models in a very short period of time and in a business climate with a high level of uncertainty, and really essentially reinvent themselves to forge ahead and serve their customers in this pandemic. And to provide some data as an opener to this conversation, according to Harvard University's Opportunity Insights organization, since the pandemic, 34% of firms that were open prior to COVID have had to close, and revenues on average for these firms are down 33% year over year. And while we've probably have heard about the impact of these companies in sectors such as travel and hospitality, food and beverage, and transportation, most of the collateral damage has been a down market phenomenon. And so these small firms have been extremely hard hit, but are also really important in the survival, resiliency, and the rebound of the overall global and US economies. So helping the sector along the way through the pandemic and other crises, as we saw last week with Texas, are these special guests for the next hour. And I'm excited and thrilled to introduce Aman, CEO of GoDaddy, who took the helm in September 2019, where he came from Expedia. Renee Lacerte, who is the founder and CEO of Bill.com, and who also took his company public in December 2019. And Sivan Whiteley, the General Counsel for Square, who is also on the executive team and leads the legal, regulatory, compliance, and security operations. As a reminder, if you'd like to submit some questions during this event, please do so using the Q&A module on your screen, and we'll do our best to answer those questions in the last 10 to 15 minutes of the program. So with that, I'd like to start with our panelists today and ask them how your respective businesses have really been helpful and supportive in providing solutions to these small, medium-sized businesses since the start of the pandemic. So maybe I'll have Renee start that conversation, please.
Great. Thanks, Bonnie. Thanks for having us, and look forward to the conversation. When it immediately happened, we offered discounts for our customers. We had extended hours for customers. We had different programs to onboard and give back to the community and help SMBs make it through the uncertainty of the immediacy, I would say, of COVID. But then, what we realize is that ultimately what we provide SMBs is a product that makes a difference. And being focused from the day I started on really thinking about can you make a difference for the small business community and really believing in them, our product enables customers to be able to do their business from anywhere. So we take all the back office mess that a business might have, such as the documents related to any invoice, any payments related to any invoice, any collaboration that might be related to that, the money that's coming and going, all the money movement, and we digitize that and we make it so you can do that business from anywhere. Well, it turns out in the pandemic, that was a pretty important thing, being able to manage your business from anywhere and to also have insight and ability to manage your cash flow with a little bit more detail that you had before. So ultimately what we saw was just making sure that we could serve the customers was, super important, getting our awareness out there to help them. And when we hear from customers that we save them 50% of the time it takes to manage that back office, it does point to some of the data that you talked about, kind of on the counter side, which is that our businesses have been resilient, and we've actually seen our customers, other than an initial, dip or increase in attrition in the first quarter of COVID. Since then, we've seen actually better ability to retain customers. So I think that points to the digital solutions and how important it is to actually transform your business so that you have the ability to run it from anywhere.
Thanks, Renee. That's really helpful. Maybe turning it over to Sivan, and maybe you can give your perspective of what you saw at Square.
Sure. At Square, I think we had two primary areas of focus. We wanted to support new businesses coming into the fold and also help existing sellers adapt to this new COVID environment. But backing up a little bit, small and medium-sized companies are the lifeblood of our economy, as you mentioned, Bonnie, and also John in his opening remarks. They represent about 90% of businesses and more than 50% of employment worldwide. And so they play a major role in global economies, and they're extremely important contributors to job creation and global economic development. So supporting business owners of all sizes is core to what we've been doing at Square since we founded Square in 2009, which was on the heels of the last recession. And just like then, what we're seeing now is that people are starting new businesses. According to government data, Americans are starting new businesses at the fastest rate in more than a decade. And new starts have historically accounted for about 1/5 of job creation, and they could account for more as we recover from the pandemic. So we knew that focusing on our roots to support these entrepreneurs was really, really important. And what we do is we take on as much of the complexity of starting, running, and growing a business as we can. So this includes things like hardware and point-of-sale software, payroll, small business loans, marketing tools, and that all work together so that business owners can focus their time on other things. And we build these financial tools because we believe no one should be left out of the economy. The cost shouldn't be too great. The technology should not be too complex. So we continue to focus on reducing the barriers to starting a new business. And when we looked at what do our sellers need, many of them needed to adapt their brick and mortar business model to something that complied with the shelter-in-place orders that were coming into play. And so what we saw was an increased need for our Omni-Channel offerings, meaning that we let a seller reach a customer wherever they are, whether it's safely in person or through other online or mobile channels that allow things like order and pickup. And before COVID, many establishments didn't have a reason to have an online or mobile presence, but they definitely do now. And so we've made sure that they have the tools to go from selling in person to selling online easily and seamlessly. And another thing our sellers needed was access to capital to help weather the storm. And when we started Square Capital years ago, we wanted to serve as a trusted partner to our sellers to facilitate funding they need to take the next important step in their business. And we knew that traditional borrowing was difficult for small businesses, which is why we wanted to come in and provide funding to those who are underserved potentially by traditional banks. And when we look at our stats, in 2019, 35% of our loans went to minority-owned businesses, which is compared to 27% of traditional loans. And 58% of Square Capital's loans went to women-owned businesses compared to 17% of traditional loans. And so during COVID, we participated in the federal government's PPP program. We facilitated over $870 million in loans to 80,000 small businesses. And the average loan size through Square was $11,000, or about 1/10 the average loan provided by the SBA through the PPP program. And we did it in a way that simplified the process for our sellers as compared to traditional financial institutions. And we were reaching customers that are sometimes overlooked by those other institutions. 60% of our PPP borrowers had never before received a loan. And 47% of our loans went to businesses and zip codes with an average household income of less than $50,000. So we essentially doubled down on providing access to financial tools and opportunities to take some of the complexity out of running a business, which helped both our existing seller base and also open the door to new entrepreneurs.
Great, thanks so much. And as you saw this past week, there was an announcement in terms of the PPP change that the Biden administration announced. Any thoughts on sort of how this might help to, again, accelerate for the smaller self-employed or very small businesses in terms of getting that support?
Yeah, I think it's a super important move. Since day one, our work on PPP has been about extending a financial lifeline to some of the smallest and hardest hit businesses. We're participating in the new round of PPP, and we've been rolling out applications to sellers who previously had PPP loans through Square, and we plan to expand it to other active sellers in March.
Great. Let's turn it over to you, Aman, and get your perspective around this whole aspect and what you've been doing for this community of SMBs.
Yeah, thanks, Bonnie. Thanks for having us. It's great to be able to talk about this super important topic of supporting small and micro businesses. As folks probably well know, GoDaddy, having started in the domains business, we have a very large number of customers that we call everyday entrepreneurs. And these are your smallest of small businesses, often with 5 employees or less or 10 employees or less. And as COVID hit, what we found was that their most important need at that time was access to information, access to offers. So when we went back sort of to the drawing board to say, okay, how do we serve that basic need? Because people just didn't know how they were going to be impacted. What we came out with was a big campaign called Open We Stand. And what that campaign was about was to get information out to folks about the PPP, get information out to folks about what offers existed, because there's lots and lots of companies doing a great job serving this customer base, but we wanted to bring it together. And we were, very pleasantly surprised. We put basically a 1-minute advertisement on YouTube. It attracted a lot of attention, over 60 million views on it. And then we created a website that it sent people to called openwestand.org. And over 80 companies partnered with us to put offers on the table. And we ran webinars. We were expecting maybe hundreds of folks to join those webinars to learn about topics like the PPP, but we would often find thousands of folks dialing in and wanting to learn more about it. As we looked at these items, and Renee and Bonnie covered it well, from GoDaddy, our customers, what they want from us is to serve their marketing needs, right? They want our help to serve their customers. And from there, we went from being a domains company to being a website company to now, being able to offer commerce solutions to our customers. And when we look across the spectrum, what they really need is, like Savan said, access to capital. What they really need is training to come online. Because what you get in these micro businesses is that these folks are resilient. These folks are creative. And we know that because we have a large base and people did not give up on their dream. We didn't see churn rates go up. People, even though they had great difficulty running their business, they looked for ways to come online and they stayed with their ideas. They stayed with their dreams. So we tried to gather all of that data. And we had been doing some work over a couple of years with 2 to 3 different universities. And we brought forward a large data set in the US that we call Venture Forward. And this data set is completely new to the world. What this data set does is it looks at the micro businesses and it looks at the impact of micro businesses in their local communities. And the way we calculate it is we look at the number of micro businesses, which we call ventures in the Venture Forward study, per 100 people in that community. And what we found just blew us away. If you look at micro businesses or ventures per 100 people in a community, just adding one more venture per 100 people has an impact on employment. Just by adding one more micro business per 100 people, we see median household income go up by hundreds of dollars over a 3-year period. So we've been super excited about that study too. We're using that body of work to go to policymakers. We're using that body of work to expose micro businesses to their local governments and saying, look, if you know about your community, you probably know your big businesses, you might know your medium-sized businesses, but it's time to get to know the micro businesses because they have a very real impact in your local communities. So as part of that, in 2021, we are reaching out to mayors of 500 cities across the US. We're putting that data together for them. We're giving them that data. We're, helping them understand what they can do with it. And we're already seeing some success where in a couple of cities we've seen, in one city it might be an e-commerce accelerator that gave out a few $1,000s to a few companies. In another city, we might see a mayor or the local government really look at the venture forward data as a way of addressing PPP and saying, okay, who are the people who really need this money? So to summarize, I think the needs of micro businesses today are varied. We have to remember these people are creative. Technology is available to them. They want to move online. They're moving online very, very quickly. But if we can provide them with the training, if we can provide them with broadband, if we can provide them with access to capital, if we can just support them, as we would support other businesses, they can do a great job of helping us come back from the pandemic.
Great. I think it's really interesting to kind of hear from all three of you sort of this whole notion of the resiliency of these businesses. And again, as we all talked about, they don't have necessarily the security net and the balance sheets as larger companies do. So maybe fast forward now to 12 months later. And again, I know we're all sort of very optimistic with the vaccines coming out and all these other things that hopefully get us truly to the other side. But now, when you think and talk to these businesses and these companies and your customers, what are you hearing from them in terms of how they're thinking about the next 12 months? And maybe as we ended with Aman, maybe we'll start with you and maybe talk about a little bit of sort of your customer growth that you think you're going to see and anything else you want to share around that.
Yeah, so looking back at 2020, GoDaddy was in the fortunate position of helping customers come online. So we saw record customer growth, except for 1 year in 2017 when we had a large acquisition. This was the largest net new customers we've added at 1.4 million customers, almost added in 2020. As we look into 2021, we continue to see customers pivoting online. We continue to see the demand being there because we think at the core, what's happened is that customers have shifted online, and that's not going away now. Like in many cases, their business model has just changed. And although we see it in the broad numbers, I think a couple of stories help us just understand how fundamentally businesses have changed. We have a customer in the UK, they make vegan pies. And before the pandemic, they just opened up. They used to have a truck actually, and then they got a store. And they were serving their local community. Well, the pandemic hit, and of course, nobody was walking into their store for vegan pies, and they decided to pivot online. That customer has been so successful, and we ended up actually featuring them in one of our ads, which led to them getting even more attention. But that just on them pivoting their business online and their commitment to understanding how to market online, understanding how to turn from a business that was serving customers in the store to serving customers now all over the UK. They've become a business that ships pies all over the UK. Now, that's a fundamental shift, right? They are always now going to have this channel, and that business is going to evolve to handle this new traffic, this new set of customers that they have, even after the pandemic goes. So, from our perspective, this evolution has broken an inertia for folks. Folks are now online. And as folks become successful online, more and more businesses see that, and they're like, well, maybe it's not so hard. Maybe we can do it too. Because for a lot of our customers, the hesitation, the difficulty they feel in starting something new online is one of the biggest roadblocks. At GoDaddy, one of the things we constantly talk about is that, yes, we provide the tools for our customers to market to their customers, to engage with their customers, but we also have 6,000 guides. And the job for these guides is to take calls or chat messages from customers and help them understand how they can grow their businesses, help them understand what next tools and capabilities they might need. And those guides are core to our competitive differentiator. And we consistently, I ask people all the time, I say, we all get a letter here and there of a customer that we weren't able to fully satisfy. But how many businesses get handwritten notes from customers that a guide actually changed their business or changed their life? And I get these notes on a regular basis because these guides really, really make a difference to folks. So our view is, as customers get over the inertia to just pick up the phone and call or chat or talk to one of their peers and say, look, I can be online too. I've done it. You can do it too. We'll continue to see some level of growth going into 21 as well.
Great. And that's a really great perspective from a outwardly facing client external. Maybe we'll turn it over to Renee, because you mentioned, you're really helping the back office in terms of the transformation, and would love to hear from your perspective and sort of what you see with your customers over the next short-term horizon.
Sure. Well, it's interesting because I think at the beginning of the pandemic, it was uncertainty prevailed, like you said. And as a result, I think all of us were holding our breath. And I come from a family of entrepreneurs, my parents, my grandparents, lots of businesses. And one of the things I learned growing up around all of these activities was that they're problem solvers. And so SMBs like to solve problems. That's why they start their business. That's why they're an entrepreneur. That's why they go out and take a risk that somebody in the world might like what they're doing. And so, this was just a big problem. And unfortunately, it was one that came out of nowhere for everybody. But what we saw across the last 12 months is that businesses are great at solving problems. The SMB, the entrepreneur, really understands and has passion and dreams, as Aman said. And I love the example of the pie maker in Great Britain. We have lots of examples like that too. And one that comes to mind is Wag, which is the #1 dog walking app in the country. When everybody was home, all of a sudden, they were walking their dogs. And so what do they do from a business model perspective? They don't have the same demand. Well, they were on our platform, and by using our tool, they extended, and invited all their employees that were involved in expending to be a part of the platform. They were able to save costs tremendously, maybe 50% in the first month, and that allowed them to shift some of their focus on a new business model, which was vet consultation over the web. And that's become a big part of their business. And so that's just one example. I think we all have our favorite restaurant that managed to pivot, or whatever the example is. People have this dream and this passion around your business. You're going to find a way to make a difference and keep on fighting the fight. And so I think part of what needs to happen for SMBs, and I think what we've seen and why we're having this conversation, is that the digital transformation that all three companies are a part of makes a huge difference in actually giving people time back to think about their business more strategically, to really get back to their passion and their dreams. And so when we can save a customer 50% of the time to run that back office, that becomes more real for them to be able to go spend time doing other things that are more important. And we see this, ultimately as a tailwind. We don't see it being a massive jump overnight saying everybody's going to switch to digital transformation. But what we do see is the retention, like I said, is getting higher. And we also see more commitment from our partners, accounting firms, from our large financial institution partners, from our software providers. We see more commitment to saying, you know what? Businesses, SMBs in particular, they deserve innovation. They deserve to have, the freedom to be able to think about what makes their business successful and what makes them excited to go to work every day. And so at Bill.com, we've always been champions for the SMB. We've always been focused on that simplicity. And so COVID has enabled us, to in some ways highlight the message that, hey, if now is challenging for you, maybe now is a great time to think about digital transformation. And as we go forward into 2021, as we come out of the pandemic, I think more and more people are going to be saying, wow, like we adapted and we managed to get by without that. I'm going to change my business practices like my neighbor did, my friend did, or my coworker did, some other company. So all that is, I think, we're leading to really the digital transformation that we're all part of. It's just going to continue to accelerate, in my opinion.
Great. And maybe a follow-up to that, Renee, is you did end up, or I saw that there was an announcement that you made around the results of a new survey that you had. You want to share some of those findings? Because I do think that they were pretty insightful and alongside with what you've been talking about.
Yeah, it was really interesting. We just completed the survey. It was around 1,000 SMBs across the U.S. And one of the things, which isn't a surprise in hindsight, but one of the things that we were happy to see is that 75% of the small business owners were focused on taking action to drive revenue. They weren't thinking about cost cutting. They weren't thinking about all the the negative side of what COVID is. They're thinking about, how do I grow my business? And part of that also came out of that, 4 out of 5 ended up saying that, yes, it's uncertain out there, but we believe it's going to grow. And around 50% felt it was going to grow there in the first quarter of 2021. So lots of focus on hey, how do I grow my business? And I believe I will grow my business. And they 85% felt that growing revenue was far more important than cost cutting. So it's a big part of the digital transformation, is enabling businesses to solve problems that they really set out to do. And I think that's the, like I said, the digital transformation that really matters. And I think, one of the things that, we've also seen, and I think this is, maybe just part of the year of the pandemic, was so much more than just COVID, right? But we've also thought about the social injustice out there and how do we give back and make a difference there. And so one of the things that we heard, from employees and from customers is, hey, if you can help, we would love to have the help. And so we recently announced a partnership with the African Diaspora Network to really help Black entrepreneurs in the United States have a path, an accelerating tool of integrations with interactions, I should say, with leading thought leaders from academics and from business, and we're excited about that. So I think it kind of all comes together, because digital transformation is it's really part of everything that we're doing.
Absolutely. And again, as we all talked about here, the common thread is this acceleration of it all, right? Again, so that it's at the end of the day very much a win-win for everybody. And again, the resiliency. And maybe turning to you, Aman, you have a really interesting perspective given your role. So maybe if you want to share some of what you've seen in your role and how you've really kind of helped again with the resiliency and the things that have kind of gone beyond sort of the revenues and the cost side of it.
Sure. I mean, I think what we've been hearing from our customers is that a number of things haven't really changed. People still value speed and trust. And by trust in this context, I mean transparency and simplicity around fees and policies. And, for speed, it means being able to get up and running quickly, to onboard to new products quickly, and get fast access to cash flow. And speed and trust were paramount pre-COVID, and they definitely continue to be now. But we've seen a number of things change, and some acceleration in trends that were already secular themes. The first one is we really saw an acceleration of cashless businesses. In pre-COVID in February 2020, we saw that 5% of Square sellers in the U.S. were cashless. And, come January 2021, that's up to 13%. So there's a remarkable increase in cashless adoption rates compared to pre-pandemic. And we're also seeing a notable drop in the share of cash payments that are taking place. The second trend is something I mentioned before, is we're seeing an increased need for Omni-Channel offerings. So restaurants, for example, they've had to adapt to taking orders online, and we've been helping them make that switch. And the third thing that we've seen, which is really interesting, we call it vertical blending. So we have 3 primary verticals: restaurants, services, and retail. But businesses today aren't staying neatly in their vertical. What was once a high-end restaurant now might also be a grocer, or you have a flower shop that's scheduling appointments like a hairdresser might do just to manage their traffic flow. And so I think it's been mentioned by a few people, but I think what we're seeing now is an entrepreneurial hustle that is at its most creative. And so having a platform that supports a breadth of services, retail, and restaurants is all the more important in these times. And then, the trends that we thought might take 3 years to come to fruition, we're seeing take 3 months. And, as Aman mentioned, I think these shifts could have a much more lasting impact because they've changed some of our most basic expectations and habits as consumers.
Great. I love your phrase of entrepreneurial hustle, right? I mean, we've, again, seen this acceleration, but maybe taking a step back from kind of the leading a business like this, right, is that, again, I think that while we're all really kind of coping in various different ways, right? And I would say that this hustle has happened also within your companies and organizations, right? And things that I've heard consistently from when I talk to some of these leaders is around kind of the fatigue that has kind of created as a result, right? And the blurring of the work and the personal lives, right? Because we're all sort of sometimes just, in our house doing both. So maybe we can talk about and switch gears in terms of how you're helping your employees and your teams to really strategize around and keeping that innovation within your companies to really, again, come up with these amazing solutions to help these small and medium-sized businesses. Maybe I'll start with you, Aman, on that topic.
Yeah, Bonnie, it's a great topic to talk about. And I think, obviously we want to keep the customer in mind through all of the innovation that we're doing. And there are great examples of feature sets or product roadmap changes, marketing changes that were all done over the last year to serve our customers. I could talk about, like Sivan mentioned, lots of businesses have just evolved. Now suddenly they need tight Zoom integration with their online appointments, and it needs to be one click, and it needs to just work with their other systems appropriately. And we, as GoDaddy, found those needs become paramount. We reacted quickly and offered those types of features or local delivery and things like that for our customers. But there are two topics that I wanted to touch on, that are related to the question you asked, because I think at the core, innovation is also about how we as a company shift how we do things to serve our customers better. And the two thoughts that come to mind, as the pandemic hit, clearly customers had a ton of questions, and very often we say at GoDaddy, when our customers call us, we are their CMO. When they call the guide, they're looking for help and support. And we found lots and lots of customers calling us, but we had an opposing force where we needed to first secure safety for our own guides, which meant that we had to take them home. And that was, 6,000 people that we had to get home, or actually even more than that, given the support functions. We had to get them all home quickly, while at the same time be able to take our calls for our customers, because we didn't want to not be present for our customers. And the level of innovation I saw from our teams there was fantastic, because the GoDaddy system, it's built over 20 years. When a customer calls a guide, we don't have a script. We don't have, like a template where the guide goes through a set of known questions. It's really about understanding the unique challenges for that customer, their business, and then trying to give them the best advice for it. And one of the ways our guides do that is that our supervisors and guides, they sit very closely together. And while the guide is on the call, the supervisor will come in and sit with them and guide the guide while the guide guides the customer. And suddenly when you're remote, you can't do that, right? So we found guides using tools, technologies, chat to still be able to serve our customers. And I thought that was one different, unique thing about GoDaddy, where we were able to serve customers in a time of great need for them. The other is that we have a great program called Empower. Empower is based on the idea that we want to empower everyday entrepreneurs. That everyday entrepreneurs is our term for the entrepreneurs that lead these micro businesses, that do these side hustles, and so on. We started it in 2017, and it's basically a class that entrepreneurs go through. And since 2017, we've delivered over 300 workshops. We've had 3,500 entrepreneurs graduate from this program, and 77% of those graduates are from underrepresented minorities. And that program is really, really important to those folks. Now, suddenly with the pandemic, we're not able to offer it in the manner that we did in the past. So to be able to pivot, be able to offer that program with the same effectiveness, be able to reach into those communities and support them, because our mission is to make opportunity inclusive for all. We want to make sure we continue to serve underrepresented minorities. And being able to continue to do Empower has been a fantastic thing. I actually did an Empower session where the CTO of GoDaddy and we did a panel for 60 of our entrepreneurs. And it was just amazing. From the basic questions to super detailed questions, they really wanted to understand technology. They wanted to understand the tools they should be using, how they should be making choices. And at the end of that session, I really felt that we were making a difference. And so that's another example of something that I feel, people at GoDaddy pivoted to do something different that then allowed us to continue to serve our customers.
Great. And I love that story. And similarly here at the NYSE, when we used to host 2,000 events in-house, we really needed to figure out how we could connect with our community. And again, I'm really grateful for you to be a part of this panel. And we're doing all these virtually to, again, help to get the messages out and get the important things. Maybe turning it over to Renee, and again, along those lines of, continuing to keep that innovation, continuing to keep communications with your teams, helping to kind of really make them feel like, this is going to end and we are going to be, getting to the other side of it. What have been the things that you've employed and the strategies that have been successful for Bill.com?
It's a great question. It's something I spend a lot of time thinking about. When I started the company, it was really focused on helping a community. It was focused on helping the community of entrepreneurs and helping a community of employees. And so when this happened, first and foremost, you have to think about your employees, like Aman talked about. And one of the things that we've done on a consistent basis is to really have more communication. And that communication might be, a town hall. It might be, me joining a donut group and catching up over lunch with random people that I don't know yet. It might be, me dressing up as Santa Claus, which I happen to do every year, and giving our employees a tour of the new office, during the holidays so they could have something to look forward to. It also meant creating and giving mental health days, so to speak, right? So we added extra days, holiday schedules randomly, and not so randomly towards the end of the calendar year, but, a few unexpected times when we said, hey, next week, we're going to have Friday off, go take an extra time for yourself. And it's not just because of COVID and the pandemic, right? I mean, if you think about the last year, we've had the social injustice, we've had fires, we've had hurricanes, we've had freezes, we have employees in Houston and Texas, right? So you have all these different things that have really challenged an employer and the employees that are part of that community. And so the first thing that I try to do really is to listen and to hear how employees are doing, and to make sure they know that we care, and to make sure that they have an opportunity to raise any concerns with me or with the managers that they work with, and to provide that support network that businesses can be. And so I think, really gets back to, why does an entrepreneur start a company? It really is to have an impact on a community, and that community is both other clients as well as employees, and to really make sure that you're there for them. And so these are the things that, that we've done, whether it's, other things we've done, chocolates randomly, just to let people know there's something sweet in their life. But I think it's always important to be thinking about, how do you make a difference? And then when you have that connection with your employees, that's when they can kind of innovate and think about their job and actually giving back to their community through their job. And that's something that we've been really grateful for, is that our employees have been innovating at a much faster pace than we've actually seen before. And I think the energy is high when you feel like you're part of something. And that's something that we work hard as leaders to do, to make sure that our employees are connected and they really do feel that connection with the community of SMBs that we support.
Great. Thank you, Renee. Love to turn it over to Sivan. And again, a little bit of a larger organization, but would love to kind of, if you can share some of your perspectives and things that have worked for Square and their employees.
Sure. Yeah. At the onset of the pandemic, I think we thought about three things, very similar to what Renee and Aman have talked about. The first thing we thought about was our employees and our safety. Despite not having all the answers yet, we focused on clear communications, and we sent employees home on March 2nd, which was in advance of most businesses. And we're probably going to be one of the last companies to be back in the offices. But it's a strange thing going from having a handful of offices worldwide to more than 5,000 offices, home offices that are all kid and dog friendly. All these things are a huge adjustment and required stronger collaboration, as well as just assistance to our employees to help them manage the new working environment. But the second thing, we started to get a lay of the land for our customers, and then after that for our own business, but figuring out what was happening to our customers, both sellers and individuals, was really important, and before we could figure out what was happening to our own business. And I think, every day was different. It felt like a year in the early days of the pandemic. But we saw our sellers having, getting really impacted by shelter-in-place orders, and realizing that they had to massively adjust how they do business. We saw individuals who use Cash App adopt our products in new and unique ways, and so we had to make some quick decisions to support our customers, and ended up being on the forefront of stimulus efforts to get funds into the hands of both small businesses and individuals who needed those funds the most. And finally, like others have mentioned, we had to focus on communication, both internally and externally, with really clear and transparent statements about what we knew and what we didn't know, owning up to the fact that there's a lot of uncertainty, not downplaying the severity of the situation. And that's the approach we've continued this past year. So yeah, again, just doubling down on innovation that really bolstered the speed and trust, which have always been important, but became even more important with the pandemic.
Great. And speaking of the innovations and whatnot, Saman, maybe, obviously you had your earnings announcements yesterday, and really I thought it was really interesting in terms of some of the things you shared around your Cash App and your seller ecosystem. Again, you've already touched a little bit about that, but maybe if there's anything else you want to share with the audience here around sort of that whole evolution.
Yeah, I'd love to. I've actually talked a lot about the seller side of our business, but not a lot about Cash App, which is another way that Square enables people to participate in the economy. So Cash App gives individual consumers a suite of tools to help them store, send, spend, and invest their money. And one of the things we did, we launched new boosts on Cash App during the pandemic, so consumers can access discounts to places like grocery stores and Walgreens for items they need. And then, as I mentioned, for customers who were eligible for CARES Act stimulus and unemployment benefits, we provided a digital way for them to receive their funds immediately instead of having to wait for paper checks to come in the mail, months later. And then I touched on this, but we're also seeing Cash App users, customers, using the Cash App platform in new and creative ways. So like with Cash for Business, you have side hustlers or merchants like artists and churches who are taking online donations and tipping. Both Cash for Business and Cash App overall grew more than 200% in 2020. So clearly the products are resonating with folks. But we also launched some products that connected our two ecosystems, the seller and Cash App ecosystems, and those helped both businesses and individuals during this difficult time. So for example, we know it typically takes a considerable amount of time for payroll funds to move from an employer to their employees, which can lead to slower payouts for the more than 80 million hourly workers in the US. And so in Q3 last year, we launched 2 new features for our payroll product, which are instant payments and on-demand pay, which make it easier on employers and employees to get paid faster. So, in general, we're focused on products like these that provide both employers and individuals more flexibility and just more control over their money.
Great. We're starting to get some of these questions in, and this is a great segue into one of the questions which I'll open up to also Renee and Aman, which is that, are there other areas of technology that you've seen that these business owners are utilizing and needing the most? And again, Saman, I think is a great overview of sort of all the things that Square has done. So again, I'll turn it over to Renee and Aman to address.
Sure. I think the most important thing that we can do is eliminate the busy work. And the busy work is really all the documents that people have, all the collaboration that they do with their employees and their accountants, the interaction with the payment system through the banking network. And elimination for us means using AI to kind of eliminate that data entry, using AI to auto-identify payment information on invoices that come through, using the ability to make it simple to text and connect with your suppliers or your customers. And ultimately, it is all about paying and getting paid. And so, making it simple to pay and get paid, making it fast to pay and get paid is one of the reasons that, we've actually invested in the real-time payment network, and we'll be investing in debit rails so people can get paid when they want to get paid, much the way Square's done, and Savan can talk about that. But it's really an opportunity for us to focus on simplicity, and I think AI is really driving all of that. And that's the focus that we've had, is to really eliminate the steps that a business has to take every day to do business and get back to their passion and their energy. And that's really the technology that seems most interesting.
And I think what I would say is, the digital wave is still reaching micro businesses. There's lots and lots of businesses that aren't actually online yet. And just starting with the idea to take friction away for them to come online continues to be a massive opportunity. And like Renee said, we absolutely believe in the power of machine learning and AI and being able to offer not just our customers, but our customers' unique experiences. But what all of this is getting to for me is that ultimately, there are 7 billion people on the planet. Everybody has their own unique ideas, and they should have the ability to bring their ideas to the world and be able to do that with super low friction. And the internet offers people the ability to do that. And once they do that, once they're able to bring their ideas online, they add more and more and more to it, whether that's, that they want to sell a product or they want to offer a service, or maybe they want to create a community or just a blog, right? Those ideas grow into other things. And that's what we see our customers ask for. Our customers start with just a name, and then they create an identity, and then they grow that idea or that business over time. And, from there, what I think technology can really offer, and it's the technology of today and also what's coming on the horizon, what we want is micro businesses to have the ability to be in front of their customers in a manner that's as professional as a large business. Because truly technology can now level the playing field, where if a customer gets a message, not our customers, but our customer's customer gets a message, or they have an experience with our customer, that experience can be the same high quality experience that what a large business might offer. And that creates a vision of the world where there are lots and lots of folks doing lots of different things and being able to do them well. And that for GoDaddy is an exciting sort of vision of where we think the world's going.
Great. And I've been in technology all my life, and I really do believe in that technology does help to level the playing field across. And again, thank you so much for touching on the other question that came in, which was around sort of the usage of AI in, again, not only in your businesses to help, again, foster innovation and whatnot, but really to help serve your customers. But maybe I'd love to kind of actually broaden that out to not just AI, but what are sort of, if you think about the next 5 years and anticipating your customers' needs and anticipating how your businesses will grow, anything else around that longer term horizon from a technology perspective that you foresee will be things that you will either have started to address today or think will be needed to be addressed in the next 3 to 5 years? So again, maybe I'll turn it over to Renee to start that, and then maybe to Sivan and Aman.
Yeah, I think it's not exactly the answer you want. I'm going to focus again on AI, but I'm going to maybe step back. If you think about software technology over the last 40 or 50 years, what's changed is how software has been applied. And it continues to reach deeper and deeper into the processes that humans have. And when we think about, the business processes and all the different things that can be automated, or things that people didn't think about 10 years ago, there are things that, we know, and we can talk about lending as an example, and the ability to use the information to do a better job of lending. You can talk about, not having to do any data entry around the bills or automatically invoicing customers. These are all things that the AI side of software is going to enable a much different experience for customers. And if just to kind of step back and give you a different example, if you happen to have a Tesla and you get in the Tesla Model X, you put your foot on the brake and the car door's shut. Well, that's a process that was eliminated. Nobody has to worry about shutting the car doors now, because you put your foot on the brake and they know that's something that you're going to want to do if you're ready to get started on your drive. And so these are the types of things that I think software enables. And I think every one of the companies, whether it's Sivan or Aman or Bill.com, we're focused on how can we use software and the capability that we have with the data that's behind our platform to enable more simplicity and more elimination of mundane tasks. So I think there's a long road to go with the AI, and ML tools to be able to make a difference into the processes that businesses have every day.
In terms of a longer term horizon, I think we look at cryptocurrency as having the potential to be an instrument of economic empowerment, a way for the world to participate in a global monetary system in a more inclusive way. And that really aligns with our purpose of economic empowerment and our belief that everyone should be able to participate and thrive in the economy. And so when we look at the attributes of crypto and blockchain technology, the fact that it's verifiable, it's transparent, it's independent, I think that has the potential to be very disruptive to how commerce operates in the future. And so that's why we as a company have invested in Bitcoin financially, also from a product perspective. I can talk about Cash App a little bit more there, and a leadership perspective by forming Square Crypto. And we've also taken an innovation and legal perspective on it through the formation of COPA. So, with Cash App, we built Bitcoin into Cash App so that anyone could easily buy and sell Bitcoin. And so through that, Cash App's providing an easy on-ramp to a somewhat complicated and maybe intimidating system. And so we're going to continue innovating to make Bitcoin more accessible. And then with Square Crypto, we have this team at Square that's solely focused on contributing to Bitcoin open source work. And so the work they do is to help the entire industry benefit from the promise of a native internet currency like Bitcoin, not just Square. And then COPA, which is near and dear to my heart, we formed, it stands for the Crypto Open Patent Alliance. It's a nonprofit community of like-minded people and companies who formed to encourage the adoption and advancement of cryptocurrency technologies and to remove patents as a barrier to innovation and growth. The concern is that when there's a new foundational technology like crypto that gets locked up in patents, innovation will be stifled. And so COPA was established to combat that by sharing crypto patents. And so, given that we see Bitcoin as having this potential to be a more ubiquitous currency in the future, we're making the investments now in product and leadership so that we can just continue to learn and participate in a disciplined way.
And I think as I think about our customers, it just still, again, the simple things are still quite hard for micro businesses. As we look at just society evolving, our customers need to be where their customers are. And today that's evolving very, very quickly. If we go back 10, 20 years or pre-internet, these customers that we're serving, they had likely a store and people walked into the store and that was the extent of the business that they had to run. And there's massive amounts of work to do to use AI, as Renee said, to help them, automate things there too. But slowly those customers started to go online, and then they started to be on major platforms, then they started to be on social media platforms. And that's going to continue to evolve. We think there are going to be more and more places that will vie for customers' attention. And at the end of the day, what is the small business or micro business owner doing? They're trying to find a way to get their inventory across those different channels, be able to manage the price across those channels, and often just give up because it's just too hard. It's not seamless. It's not easy to do. And even if it all sits in just 2 or 3 different tools, the interfaces are high friction, where a lot of manual work has to be done to make that type of sort of experience work for their customers. Well, the areas where GoDaddy is investing is that what we see is a world where ideas like commerce and content come very closely together, where a small or micro business owner creates a piece of content. That piece of content is done beautifully, it's engaging, and it is almost instantly commerce enabled and available on every channel that is obvious for that micro business owner. And for doing that, the merchant shouldn't have to work hard to get there. It should be technology and AI that's able to determine the best price points, the best channels, the best platforms where that type of service or product should be made available. The technology should be able to put that product, make it available in that channel, and be able to learn and make that better and better with more and more customers. So, this whole thought of every individual, a third of GoDaddy's customers are solopreneurs, so they're the only one in their business. But this idea that this opportunity that the internet brings, that digitization brings, should truly be available to everyone. That's the mission for our company. And for that to be a reality, what we're working towards is that one person can manage this complex ecosystem of where their customers are and be able to put a professional face to their customers, irrespective of the channel they're coming on. And I think over the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see that turn into a reality through efforts from many, many companies, and GoDaddy will be one of them.
Great. I loved how you segued into, Aman, sort of how some of the challenges that you articulated that your customers are facing, and it's really an interesting kind of situation where you have this digitization that's allowing for the democratization of an entrepreneurship, right? Again, kind of the technology helping to level that playing field, and again, we all know at the heart of it, entrepreneurship is what drives any economy, especially at this stage in time that we're in right now. And maybe as a way to, in the last 5 minutes, to really again talk about, again, we heard it from Aman and GoDaddy in terms of commerce and content and those challenges. Maybe Renee, turning to you from Bill.com's perspective, what do you see are some of the biggest challenges that your customers are going to be facing as they make this pivot, as they embrace this digitization?
It's interesting. I've been involved in payments for over 2 decades, and 90% of business payments today are still made via check. And so businesses rely on the paper processes that have worked for them. And I think the challenge that they have is getting onto something new, a new platform, a new way of doing something, not being chained to the desk, so to speak, is hard for folks. They're used to having their environment. And so I think in some ways, COVID forced that conversation to think about digital transformation. But the thing that holds people back is that they have a process and they feel like they don't have time to learn something new. And if you don't feel like you don't have time to learn something new, then it's our job as developers and software solutions to actually make it easy so there is nothing new to learn. That's actually simpler when you first start with the application than it would be if you were to use paper. And so the challenge that we consistently hear from our customers over and over again is that they don't have time to do the things they want to do. They don't have the time to have the energy and the passion around making their business grow. And yet that's where they want to focus. That goes back to the survey that I talked about at the beginning. They want to spend time thinking about growing their business. And yet running a business takes effort, takes mind share, and that's something that we focus on. How do we eliminate those processes so they can get back to that focus? And so I think it's the hesitancy of going to something new is because it's scary. They think it's going to be hard, and it's our job to continue to make it simpler and simpler for them, that they don't have that fear. So it's probably the fear factor that is holding businesses back, and something that needs to really be challenged, and it's in great simple applications, which I think all the companies on this panel are working hard to do. It makes a huge difference, and will end up cascading to other businesses as each of our companies works with more and more businesses.
And Sivan, would you like to add to that? Again, obviously the adoption of Cash App has been fantastic and all that, and love to hear sort of the vision of the crypto and all the things that you're doing there. But again, going back to sort of the nearer term, as you think about, again, this evolution that we're going down, and this acceleration of it, what are some of the other things that you're seeing apart from what Aman and Renee has described in terms of those adoptions, or any other challenges that you've come across?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest challenges are for customers meeting our customers meeting their customers where they are, because things have changed, and folks are not just going into a store to buy something. They're ordering online and doing pickup curbside, or as I mentioned before, somebody uses appointments, even something like a flower business, which wouldn't normally have appointments set up, just so that customers can come and buy flowers, and they can sign up through an app online and pay through the app. So getting our sellers to be able to adopt that new technology is one of the biggest privileges, I think, for all of us working at Square, because we know that we do have solutions that can help people get through these tough times and adapt to the changes that we're seeing out there. And so I think, as Renee mentioned, like making it as easy as possible for people is kind of our job, all of our jobs, and to make sure that the solutions all work together so that someone doesn't need to spend a ton of time in order to go omni-channel and be able to sell online and offline. It should be all seamless and integrated so that they can do it, very, very simply and without spending a ton of time on that, because they do have a lot of constraints in their time. They're, our sellers are extremely busy, and so it's on us to make it simple and seamless and all work together. And I think it's the greatest challenge, and it's also the greatest gift for us.
Great. So I think, amazingly enough, we're on the hour, and this has been a fantastic conversation and dialogue. And again, I really want to thank these special guests of ours, Aman, Renee, and Sivan, for your insights and your perspectives. And again, I end this with a very optimistic, perspective and outlook that yes, we have kind of, hopefully, are way beyond the lowest points here. And again, with all your solutions, technologies, and really kind of helping these entrepreneurs really kind of get to the other side and kind of, really drive to, the successes of the global economy. Again, I really, really appreciate those insights for this group and this audience. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.